Nerd Morning, everyone. My name is Jeremy, and today on the Nerd Morning Show, I am joined with my older brother Joseph, who is also a big fan of comics and things like that. Today, we're going to be talking about Batman. So, this is obviously a huge, huge topic because, Batman has been around for 80 years.
Right.
There is a huge amount of history with that. We've both have discussed that this is our favorite hero.
Yes.
And so we've got some serious commonality there. What is, for you, the big thing that makes Batman the best superhero for you personally?
I love that he always wants to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
He's the detective, started out in Detective Comics, solving the mystery, figuring it out, the nuances.
Mm-hmm.
I love the stories that have that as a component. Some of the others where they're just, here's the challenge, you have to get through it. I kind of felt Court of Owls lacked a little bit of the figuring out, the detective, the clues, the stuff that he created. The Bat computer was a huge tool early on because he had this awesome computer. Now that computers have kind of caught up with everything he could do, and we can do it on our phones, all the stuff that was awesome about the Bat computer.
Yeah.
Some of that, I think, has kind of fallen away a bit, but where he is the detective, more in Hush, he had to figure out more clues, and then taking that and how he will do whatever it takes to win, to stop the bad guy. He will sacrifice himself, his body, his stuff, right? He doesn't care about that. He cares about, I'm going to help save and protect.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do as Batman. And most of his stories, he also has the I don't kill.
Yeah. Yeah, that's generally speaking
he can,
a consistent aspect.
He can take care of whatever he wants to or needs to without killing. And that speaks to his skill.
Yeah.
You know, any combat or fighter or sniper or marksman, they can stop the problem. They just have to find them and then kill them.
Yeah.
But Batman will go to great lengths, even working to save his enemy. I love how a lot of the stories capture that about him, and even his proteges that he takes and trains in the same way.
Similar,
right?
yeah.
It bespeaks a higher level of skill that he can fight and win without killing.
Yeah.
So
obviously there is, with that morality that he has, creates some doors of nuance and complication because you have characters like the Joker who goes out and continues to kill.
Just cut off his head and be done with it.
I know, right? And so there's this point where they have to ask the question, how many of those deaths do you lay at Batman's feet?
Right.
But also there's this certain I think morality that comic book readers have, that a hero doesn't have the right to execute, that he's not they're not the judge, jury, and executioner, and by taking out that executioner role, that there is some balance of power inside of what they're doing. And if you know that you were to capture him, send him to court, and they were sentenced to be executed,
all within the law,
right? Which is interesting because superheroes are vigilantes, right? Definitely Batman is a vigilante. He's not a law-abiding person in that way, right?
In almost every way.
Totally. So it's there's just nuance upon nuance upon nuance just in this one aspect of he doesn't kill.
Right.
And I think that that's really interesting because with this fictional character in this fictional paradigm world where there's just every villain just seems to always be able to get out of prison, always be able to return. And, there's there's
just have to nod and smile. Yeah, comic book. Okay, let's go through the story.
Right. It's part of that what you accept when you go into that experience. But, like, in that you go, okay, there's a lot of, like, depth here in Batman comics to talk about with policies on how we deal with people with mental illness, because
Right.
a lot of Batman's villains have mental illness, and they have this
Right,
asylum, which is obviously starting point, probably not the most healthy environment for
no.
but like they're like, okay, not prison because of these situations here, and so they're trying to explore some of the nuances in that type of a system. Then they have like nuances of the court system with Two-Face, with him as
the DA, to start out with.
And then they have crime syndicates, particularly with like the mafia and mobs, and particularly like in his like 1980s and earlier books. Definitely, that's a big dimension of what Gotham is.
Fighting the mob more than individual bad guys.
There definitely were the bad guys, but like Carmine Falcone, he'd be one that was a regular big baddie that was a big influential aspect of the criminal underworld.
Right.
And now we don't really see them anymore. Like they might be there, but they're not like the big players.
Right. Now we're going into Joker War. And Joker is the opposite side of the coin for Batman, always has been.
Totally.
And
totally.
Catwoman, all of her intricacies of, is she good? Is she bad? Can we trust her now? Can we not?
Yeah, and then there's like the implications with her as a character that add a lot of complexity, because she is a criminal.
Yeah.
But she also is really helpful. And for Batman, a love interest. And can a hero have a love interest with a criminal? And what does that do with the morality of either of them?
Yeah.
And like that's just, it's interesting, and it just poses all these types of questions, and I just love to be able to stop and think about like, how does these ideas translate to the real world? How do the things that they've asked questions about, which obviously comic book logic doesn't translate over necessarily, right? No. Like, we're not apples to apples here. We're definitely apples to oranges.
Yeah.
But you kind of go, okay, so
the storytelling.
Yeah. Which is interesting, and if they have things like Batman, generally speaking, doesn't use guns, for example.
Right.
Right. I mean, this is not trying to say guns are bad, gun control, any of that kind of stuff, right? It's not really trying to go there, but it asks a question, and for him, killing is never an option.
Right.
So guns, particularly since he saw his parents killed by a gun, very influential to his personal, belief system.
He's not going to go there. Yeah.
But if it talks about this, and you kind of think, okay, well, what's my stance on guns? Why, whatever, and you can ask your questions off of these things and come with your own completely unique interpretations, not even based off of those things, but you just asks questions.
The aspect of a good story. It presents the question, and you can enjoy the story just for what it is, and you can choose to go a level deeper.
Yeah.
What do I think about this?
Yeah.
If I were in this situation, what would I do? How could I do it? Do I need to take martial arts training so I can stop the bad guy without killing them?
Right.
Questions to ask. Right.
Governmental questions, because they have corrupt politicians and very heroic politicians.
Yeah.
They have a lot of corrupt cops. But then they have shining examples like Montoya and Commissioner Gordon, of course. And then you've got nuanced good cops like
your
Bullock.
Standard everyday. Bullock is a great one with his. He kind of vacillates. He's a good cop. He's gonna do his job. It's all good.
Maybe he's a little lazy at times. Maybe he takes the extra effort another time.
Maybe he's a little blind to some things.
Yeah,
he's an interesting character.
Yeah, totally. I love when we see Bullock.
Yeah,
and anyways, they ask these questions, and you kind of have to think, okay, well, positions of authority in these different things. How can these people abuse their power? How can they be the absolute hero, in our society?
Yeah.
They kind of show both of these different coins. And so, for Batman comics, I just think they just offer a tremendous amount of value for us to stop and go, hey, how does this reflect my actual life experience, the actual world, when it is not the actual world at all?
Right. Good art can reflect society and make you think about it, And comic books, in my view, are a lot more art.
Oh, yeah.
Than a straight storytelling medium. I'm sure many of, especially the artists, would agree.
Oh, totally.
And they can like you said, create that thought. What do I think about this? How can I do that? And I lost a lot of where I was going with that, so we'll
That's fair.
We'll move on. We'll move on.
Right, but there's this tremendous art form, and Batman has had so many years worth of history that we've been able to see kind of the nuance ebb and flows throughout history, because our values, our virtues are going to be reflected in the stories that we tell and the stories that we consume and choose to put our money towards. Thus, what continues to become popular. And so, like, in the beginning Batman comics, you know, he is this kind of Sherlock Holmes-esque.
Way more on the detective side.
Right? He has all these things, and, like, I think it's like its third or fourth issue, a guy, like, sticks his head out a window, and he goes there and swings on a rope because he doesn't have a batarang yet, and, like, hits his head, and I'm like, dude, that guy's dead, you know? And, like, later, like, he has this different moral code, and, you know, we fast forward from, you know, issues 27 through, you know, 40 for Detective Comics, and we go into, like, the 1960s, Batman 1966, right? One of the biggest things, I think, that made comic books from a kind of a cult following of readers, because, I mean, comics were huge, but they were, I mean, in that sense, kind of not mainstreamed, and television, movies obviously opened that door. But he was mainstreamed, but it's a parody. It's almost making fun of Batman and of comics. It's extremely slapstick, and it's very intentionally doing so. And so it's like, you have comics where they're not, you know, like, we're taking themselves seriously, then 1960s not taking themselves seriously, and almost poking fun at themselves in the process, and people loved it. But, like, that one, you have also him being deputized. He is essentially a cop.
What led into the Adam West television series, same kind of feel. Right. Yep.
And so, like, yeah, when you get into the Adam West and you have this type of experience,
the bat phone very different. In the commissioner's office, he was part of any major issue. And then you move out of that, and he's the Dark Knight.
And you have also, like, the ebb and flow of the politics of comics that affect these stories. You have, at first, there was no governing system, right? And with Batman, you had a lot of different things that were going on, and horror was starting to get really big, and then, like, the government was like, oh my gosh, we can't be giving these to kids or whatever. And the serious horror things that they were putting in comics, and they didn't really have a rating system and all those types of stuff, and the government was pretty much going in there and saying, we are going to censor this media. More so than they had with any other media ever.
For that time,
And the comics creators were like, this, we can't let government control this, or we're never going to have our freedom to express anymore.
The art.
So they created the Comics Guild, and inside of that, they built a whole bunch of rules. We can do this, we can't do this, we can do this, we can't do this. And so, you know, moving forward, it's like Batman on the right side of the law, you know, doing these types of things, and at the, like, particularly with, like, the TV show, the a moral of the story, and going to Robin and be like, you know, we should enjoy a walk, right? Like, exactly.
I love those parts.
Totally. Now looking back, we're like,
Robin.
Right? We love it. It's so funny. But, like, you can see, okay, this is the mentality of this era. Super important for them. And then, you know, comics progress a little bit farther. The Comics Code pretty much was abandoned by the comic creators, and they kind of established a new rating system where they're like, this is kind of T, or aged for 13, and they pretty much mimicked kind of what now is like video game or movie rating system. Exactly. And they do their best to be able to make sure that they're age appropriate and focused on those types of things, which I think is super, super good for them. But now it's like, well, we can start telling a little bit more complex stories or things that originally we had on our do not do list.
Right.
We can maybe
we can put it here under this rating.
Which I love, because that's how, they can have that freedom of expression, explore some really interesting and complex ideas that maybe aren't best for kids, but are worth exploring and talking about.
Yeah.
And after that, they had like Swamp Thing, The Killing Joke, Watchmen, some of these things that were really, really dark. And they were huge, big successes.
Still popular.
Oh yeah. Oh man, if you guys haven't read all of those, they are like must reads in the comic world.
Joke.
Right?
Yeah.
So good. And you could not have ever published that before that.
Oh no.
And so like the sentimentality of comics shifted, and Batman changed along with it.
Yeah.
And
there were more branches.
Mm-hmm.
You could have your rated for anyone Batman. You can have your other storyline for teens and your other storyline for adults. And we've had a lot of those interesting stories that have even kind of influenced the movies that have come out more recently.
Totally. So. And you've had also like some cross population, with that, like Harley Quinn came from the Batman animated series, right? That was such a dynamic kids story,
interesting character.
Oh yeah,
like
they instant hit. It was actually initially supposed to be a throwaway character for a quick story, and huge success.
Right? Who is she? We should bring her back again, because she gives a little bit of dynamic nature to Joker, who could bounce off of her. She bounced off him.
Sometimes literally, right?
But yeah, they could evolve that character and evolve Joker more along with her.
Totally. And then she was introduced into the comics. Brand new dynamic into the comics. As time progresses, spoiler, but out of the statute of spoiler limitations, time has totally passed.
Yeah.
They break up, and that way she's able to be from a villain to kind of an anti-hero complex character, and that way they're where they give her own titles. Yes. And if you look at where she came from, which is a very definite kids rating, and then she's almost always I would be rated as a teen rated series at least. Yep. That's a very different growth we have, and we can have
she's
that
no
complexity
longer just
there.
a silly tag-along character for Joker.
Yeah.
Right.
And she can definitely be silly, and that's a big part of who she is. But she got to mature, darken, do other types of things with her personality, because she emerged into comics, where cartoon couldn't do.
Right.
Now, of course, they have, with the DC Universe streaming service, her own TV show, which is straight mature. That's the box that character goes in.
Put her there. Yes. Yeah. Right.
But we've hit a couple of different titles and things inside of as this has progressed and changed. One of I think the biggest ones, kind of on that not early era, but kind of the middle of this timeline, was the death of Jason Todd inside of Death in the Family. Huge story. And I think we can't really get the experience that we got there in any other type of medium.
Certainly not in the same way, especially how, in that case, they asked the fans.
Right?
What do you want to happen?
Yeah, because if you produce a TV show, you produce it months and months in advance.
It's way out there.
The budget for, the alternate story would be too big, right, to be able to have that type of experience.
Even if it was the final episode, and even if you pre-recorded both.
That's... If you're shooting 2 episodes, some episodes are now in current, days is maybe $2 million.
Right.
for an episode. It's like,
to have one that you're going to throw away.
Uh-huh.
Even if you plan on making it a bonus disc for your box set,
Totally.
and it's the only way you can get it, you're probably not going to make back that $2 million.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the same way.
It's not worthwhile. I couldn't necessarily coordinate that. Obviously, can't do that in movies.
No.
Animated shows, the production time still is really, really big.
Sometimes
it's a
even
little
lot
bit
further out, because you can record your audio in a few days
and then spend months or years working on the animation. So it's like it can't be there. Pros, like you can write that, but like if we're talking about like traditional literature, again, long put out time,
weeks and months. Yeah.
And if you're maybe going through an online blog style story, you could maybe
you might be able
that.
to pull that off. That'd be interesting. But
totally,
again,
but like comics, they could do that. They can say, hey, for this particular issue, we need you to draw 2 things, and for the cost of that, for the whole team, that's maybe $1,000, maybe $2,000, depending on the team that's involved for that one page. And then maybe for the next issue, they're able to outline it. But they went in and they had like a phone call and said, call in this number and vote
which way.
And then while they're doing that, they're working on the project, and they say, okay, this is the way we're going. Boom, they finish the project, and it shifts that direction.
Right.
That turnaround time, the cost of production, and the amount of individuals that are involved into a project, they're able to turn on a dime instead of trying to shift a whole battleship worth of production.
Right.
Like, it can only be done in comics. And that was a huge, huge thing.
Right? I don't know that it's been done ever since that.
I can't, off the top of my head, think of an experience like that.
Maybe. If so, comment. Let us know.
Yeah,
seriously. We want to hear about it.
But that is certainly the biggest of those type of experiences.
Right.
And, like, that was huge and tremendous, and killing a main character, like, is a big deal, even in comics where characters, as Jason Todd did, come back.
Right.
And
twist that you can always do, again, really only in comics.
Yeah.
The same villain always escaping, if you put that in your TV show, excluding Adam West's Batman, because it's Batman.
Right.
If you have the same villain always escaping, you're like, oh, make it end, and you're not going to keep watching the show. But because that's a comic book trope, you can pull out, let's play the resurrection card, which is really hard to do.
Oh, yeah.
Even
in comics, it's hard to pull off. And sometimes for, like, the time that Batman died, like, Batman R.I.P., like, it took volumes of stories where they were going and talking about him coming back.
How can we do this? And to explain it. So it's not just, just kidding, we really just want to keep using this character because he makes us money.
Yeah, which, I mean, it's a business, and that is part of the motivation.
Sure, that's a
but
thing.
They're able to, like, also swap out characters and things. One of the things that, like, Batman and all comics are also able to do is, well, you don't have contracts on the characters. Right? So if you have an actor who's like, I'm switching to do something different, my contract's up.
I'm done.
Right? You never have that problem in comics. You might have a switching of an artist, and the art style may shift and change.
That might change. One of my favorites did that in the middle. I think it went down. But whatever.
Right?
I still got the story.
Yeah, we're able to get the experience, we're able to get the story. It happens. And it works, and it only works, like, you can't change the team completely on any other type of project.
Yeah.
But we've had so many different writers inside of, like, Batman or other type of titles that, like, with 80 years, you can't have an 80-year running story in any other medium.
No.
Because you can't pass on the torch in the way that you can with
novels
comics.
couldn't carry it on like that. You probably wouldn't want it in novel form.
No, I can think of one book series that had a passing of the torch, as it were, with Wheel of Time, and that was the only one I've ever thought of that's also been successful at that.
Yeah.
And you can, like, halfway through in the Injustice comics, like, you had one writer, team, and artist, and then they finished the final years with a different team, and it feels pretty seamless, and it was an awesome series, totally one I recommend. But like they were able to do it, and inside of the rebirth era for Batman, we've had 2 major writers and artist teams, and they definitely had a different approach, which is very distinguishable and I think very interesting to see. But they carry on.
Adds interest.
Yeah, well, they carry on from where they were on those stories, and they say, okay, that's our starting point. Where can we go next? And that's cool because again, you can't do that in really any other medium.
It's true. Let's grab onto the timeline here for a minute.
Yes.
Because 80 years. Obviously, there's some restarts in the comics of okay, like Earth 1 did it really well.
Such a great series.
But you can't say, all right, Batman is 80 years old now and he's still fighting crime with the best of them.
Right.
They kind of stay the same age, even though we're 80 years on.
Yeah.
Right? You can't do that with television or even novels. You know, Sherlock Holmes only went for so long.
Yeah.
You know, they managed to kind of keep them relevant.
They keep them relevant. They kind of grow the environment. You know, now Batman has, you know, cell phone technology and things like that. But ultimately, there's this like timelessness, which they have in them, and you're like, okay, he's been fighting for 80 years, but really it's only been 2, and there's not even enough days in these years, supposed years,
even if it's back to back,
right? But there's this timelessness that somehow like seeps into the nature of that, and I think like that you can't do that in movies. Even in the Batman movies that we've had, all of them, they have not been able to grab that timelessness, which comics is able to have.
Sticks in that era, especially very visually. When you watch Michael Keaton as Batman, you can't help but see, the director, come on. Tim Burton.
Yeah?
You can't help but see Tim Burton. Tim Burton's style is all over that. And that's fine, and it's good. It's his movie.
Yeah.
Versus the new ones, Batman Begins, Dark Knight,
with Christopher Nolan.
Nolan, thank you. A very different visual and a very different story.
Yeah.
And it's all good. And the only time I can think where they've been able to successfully say, this is what happens to Batman when he's too old, at least that I like. I know you like another one.
Yeah.
But is Batman Beyond. Batman is now too old. He knows he can't be Batman anymore, so he retires it until fate throws him a new protege to become Batman.
Yeah.
That, I think, worked really well and allows us to kind of span generations.
Yeah.
But outside of that, it's still Bruce Wayne. And they have to do the morphing and keeping relevant to our current era. Those are still fun, too.
Oh, yeah. And in that one, you also, like, with Batman Beyond, you get that 90s, 80s vision of the future. And that's just interesting because it's kind of like, it reminds me of kind of like the Back to the Future. Because it's a similar era, and they like have this vision of what the future's like, and that's interesting, just kind of cut that out of like
flying cars. We still don't have flying cars.
Come on, guys.
Where's the flying cars?
But like also like with the Christopher Nolan movies, like one of the hardest things of that series was the third movie, because you have Batman who wasn't Batmaning for 5 years, and for me, I'm like, no, he's got to be fighting forever. He would never give up, never stop.
Right.
And like with the first 2 movies, you didn't ever have that feeling.
No.
And then at the end, he's like, I'm going to go and retire. And I'm like, he would never retire. He's going to have this battle forever.
Yes.
And that's kind of what
who Batman is.
Yeah. And honestly, like, they did some amazing things with that movie. Like,
love the series.
Like,
love it. It's great. But I agree. I choose to take those, and they're in this universe. You know, We've got the multiverse going on. We could
Right.
say Christopher Nolan's Batman story is over here where Rachel destroys him. Sorry. I really like the character. It's great and stuff. But it's the only way I can interpret
Yeah.
Batman choosing to stop.
Yeah. And in
Right?
in the movies as well, like with Batman 1989, love that film. Super cool. Honestly, maybe my favorite Joker, which is probably not the popular opinion. I thought he just did such a good job, and that to me also was like the Batman of the comics. Maybe it's because the Killing Joke came soon, like not too long before that, and they're like, "Ooh, let's involve that in there." And they had kind of this origin and the Vat, and that came out soon before that, and so they thought this, and they like Joker was really big, and so they grabbed pretty close to the comics. There may have been like maybe stronger performances, but not ones that I'm like, that's the comic book Joker.
Yeah.
But anyways, side notes and sidebars, right? That story, like, what did they do at the end? They kill Joker. And, like...
We've not seen that anywhere else.
No, because in the comics, they don't kill the villains because they're like, we're gonna go and use that character again someday. And in the movies, we're like... that actor may or may not sign up again. We probably should kill him.
Well, we're just going to cut it off here. And especially then, there weren't as many sequels.
Yeah.
You know, Superman, not too long before that, they made the first movie and the second movie back to back.
Yeah.
And it nearly bankrupted them.
They were the most successful and most profitable long term. But
they didn't know that.
No.
And it,
Which big chance, big thing for them because they were going in, they were making a reasonably for that era serious superhero movie, and like they're great. 3 and 4, they're.
I like 3.
I struggle with 4 so much.
Yes.
And 3, like I'll watch it. Like you want to say, let's watch this movie. I'll probably be like, cool, let's grab some popcorn.
I just like when he melts the computer, though.
Oh, man, the computer. Oh, my gosh. It's so bad.
Anyway, we're doing Batman,
I
not
know,
Superman.
not Superman.
Sorry.
Oh, gosh.
We'll talk Superman later. But yeah, they kill Joker.
And that's specific to the medium, I think.
Yeah. And you could even debate, did Batman actually kill him? He tied his leg. Sorry, spoiler if you've not seen it, but he ties up the Joker.
It's like 30
and he
years
falls.
old.
I know. If you haven't seen it. But he falls, so Batman was the cause of the death, but he didn't outright kill.
Yes.
Right.
But he, like...
Right.
It's kind of the Ra's al Ghul that they do when Batman Begins. Like, I can't kill you, but I'm not having to save you.
Right. Which, again, is kind of borderline.
Totally.
Are you actually killing or not? But my wife says it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And there's argument for that.
Sure.
But
that's also interesting because Batman may be able to have that kind of rationale because there's a lot of argument that Batman is insane.
That's an interesting one. One of my side note on that. One of my favorite little comic series is Alfred taking off the Joker costume. Right.
Definitely an Elseworld thing.
Way an Elseworld thing, but just a.
Wait a second. Is he creating the need for the Batman so he could be Batman? But, like, honestly, like, and this has made comments over and over in the comics and the movies and the cartoons, is like, what kind of a person dresses up as a bat? Right? Like, you have to be insane in order to do that.
In my opinion, he's clearly insane.
Right?
As a bad quote.
And, like, this whole thing is inside of Gotham about like mental instability. Like all of the villains have mental instabilities.
Oh, yeah.
Everything he fights has some type of imbalance of some sort.
Yeah.
Whether it's multiple personalities, like different like schizophrenias or like other like all of those types of things. And for him, he is a child who's been broken by trauma and cannot escape it.
Right.
Right? He, with the finances and the things that he's able to do, he could, and actually some of the comics even have him trying to renovate the city and do all these philanthropic type approaches. But really, it kind of goes down to, is Batman a guy who can only deal with his pain and suffering by punching people? And so he goes out to fight crime to justify his psychosis and to give him that outlet because of his mental
his trauma.
state.
He's trapped. Yeah.
And like
it's
they have stories like with Hush, which we mentioned. We have the relationship between Catwoman and Batman, and Catwoman's like, maybe I'll change and be a little bit more good, and I'll change myself for you. And then Batman saying, like, I can't change.
Yeah.
Like, I physically can't change. And it's, like, she's like, wow, you are insane. Like, she makes that claim for him because of what he does as Batman.
Yes. And at that point, she cares. So she's like, there's a problem here. We got to address this.
Yeah. And ultimately, like, that, like, gives them a fissure inside of the relationship and challenges and all that kind of stuff.
You need the drama, especially when women are involved.
But it's like, oh my gosh.
Sorry, I didn't mean that.
Oh my gosh.
Sexist.
Shame on you.
I know. But it's a common trope.
Inside of narrative.
Inside of a narrative, it's a common storytelling device.
Is that
that's how I meant it. I apologize if that came off weird.
It's a very interesting thing to see him in that light.
Yeah.
And
especially for someone who cares about him to shine that light on him and
say this is a thing,
right?
And there's I think serious argument that Batman is quote unquote crazy.
Yeah. Or the scene with Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman holding the lasso of truth. I'm really Clark Kent. I'm really Diana Prince. I'm Batman.
I'm Batman. Right? He sees that, and he actually makes comments of that, like, in multiple times in multiple stories. I think the best example of I am Batman is in Batman Beyond. There's this, like, person who's a villain and trying to, like, convince people that they're going crazy and talking to them.
Episode.
And, like, at the end, Terry McGinnis is like, how did you know that you weren't going insane? And he said they kept on addressing me as Bruce.
I don't call myself Bruce.
I am Batman.
And
you're going,
then,
he's like this retired for years and years, and still, this is who he is.
Yep, that's a good one.
I don't know. I just love that about him.
You can put your comments, is Batman insane? Or just really dedicated?
Definitely let us know what your thoughts are, for sure.
I'm going for dedicated because that's how I want to see him. There you go.
I'm going to go with the complicated. It's complicated.
Complicated works.
Yep, it's complicated. Oh, man. Okay, so we've hit a couple of different stories. Your best, favorite, big story arc?
Oh, I really enjoyed Court of Owls. The depth that one went into, especially with the ancient organization of the Court of Owls, how it's been around for centuries. It was a foundation of Gotham itself.
Yeah.
And how the Waynes were part of it, and I don't want to put in any spoilers for anybody who hasn't read it, because it's a great story.
I think I own it like maybe 2, maybe 3 times.
Right?
Love it.
Side note, if you need a really easy cosplay, just put on a suit and get an owl mask.
Done that. I've done that.
There's a scene where he's trapped by the owls. Not a big spoiler. That's kind of bound to happen. He goes through the self-sacrificing aspect that I love about him, where, I'm trapped here. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to make it easy on you either. And whatever's going to happen, he's going to keep fighting either until he wins or he dies.
Yeah.
And that's one of the aspects of Batman that I love, that makes me look at myself and say, okay, times are tough. I can give up and just go watch TV, or I can take a few breaths and I can dig in and say, all right, how am I going to fix it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
I absolutely love that story arc. In fact, that was the one that made me kind of like a casual, I'm going to read comics every once in a while kind of person to like going full blown, full throttle. That was that story arc.
That's your story.
That was the one that like transformed me to be a comic reader. And so obviously I've got to totally recommend that one. I loved in that like how they opened that up, and like the Court of Owls are forever before and now forever after.
Right.
Like
it could still pop up in the storyline, and that's fascinating.
And it's like for something that's been around at that time 70 years and insert a character or group of characters to make them feel like they've been here all along, I thought was a tremendous accomplishment.
And reaching out into the other stories, like Batwoman or Batgirl had her own line, and there's an episode or an issue that ties directly in to the Court of Owls story arc.
They linked that into
They grabbed
things.
into those things, and that's just fun.
And definitely Nightwing is sucked right into that. Like current Nightwing story arcs, like Court of Owls are essential to those stories.
Rebirth started with him going that direction. So it's
so
that's very fun.
Yeah, like tremendous impact, and like major props to Greg Capullo as well as Scott Snyder and the rest of that team for doing those. Like, you guys made me comic readers. Thank you. That was so huge. And one of the things that I thought was done, I don't know who ended up initially having this idea. I guess probably the writer. Maybe it was influenced by the artist. I don't know, because they can work together on creating how the story and the layouts work.
Yeah.
But there's the part where he is being, like it was mentioned, trapped, and he's being attacked, and it's somewhat of a psychological attack.
Oh, very.
And so the story, like you reading it this way, and then you have to turn it because this art and the text and all that shifted, and then you're turning it again, and you're reading the comic book upside down, and I thought that's so cool. You can't, what do you do? Can you do that in a movie? You can't do that in a movie. Can you do that in a TV show? You can't do that in a TV show. Can you do that in a book? Not really.
Yeah.
I mean,
to illustrate things are crazy right now. You gotta turn it over to...
The world is turning upside down. And the world literally is turning upside down with this book. I was blown away, and I was like, this medium is doing things that you can't do in any other medium.
Right.
This is an art form, like you said, that can be tremendously powerful. And I was just blown away.
I was reading that on my iPad digitally, so I tried to turn it over. And so I had to lock the orientation. Okay, I get it.
Oh, that's so interesting. That's so interesting.
I saw what was going on. I'm like,
oh no.
Lock. Okay.
Or you're stuck having to try to read it upside down, and that's a whole new experience, right?
Just, what's going on?
Oh, man.
Right?
Yeah.
Very, very well done.
Yeah.
Great art. Interesting story.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of any type of longer story, anything they're reaching back and saying, hey, some of this always existed, and we're just showing it to you now. And if you dig into it a little bit more, you can see how this was affecting you way before.
Yeah. It's
fascinating.
Just cool because you're just like, you're getting the discovery with the writer, like with the character, and you're like, all this is being unveiled. And it's cool. It's a satisfying experience.
It's very satisfying.
And I
some
think
of my favorite stories
Batman has done that multiple times in various stories, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I think for me, though, that one I think would be one I would probably maybe claim as my favorite Batman story because of so many different reasons. I think one of the ones that, as I was progressing as a reader, I was just blown away from was Batman Hush.
That is a fun one. Especially the interesting differences between the ending of the movie and the comic.
Totally. Which, like, some of the creators really of those, like, I saw Jim Lee, who did the art for it, and he went to the showing. He's now like an executive and artist and creator inside of the DC universe. So he's obviously really, really invested in the universe and obviously that story because he did the art for it. And he loved from the posts that he put up at least, he loved the movie and he thought this is so cool because you are going to be surprised.
Right. Both times.
Both times, exactly.
Both times.
And I know some people were real upset because they loved the comic so much, and that's fair. I'm like, in the comics, I'm like, you have all these different universes, all these different interpretations. If we have an Elseworld experience of a similar story, I'm okay. I've got maybe this multi-dimensional mind now, but I'm like, if this is true, and this is true, and this is true, and this is true. And maybe I think, honestly, that's done a really good things for me in general in life, because I'm like, I can see your point, and you see your point, right?
Yeah,
and, like, that's maybe a blessing of comic reading. But, like, that was such a cool story.
It was such a great story.
I loved it in both forms.
I like both forms. Picking a favorite, I'm going to say the comic.
I agree.
The character they added to the comic, I think, made it a little more rich.
villain
Especially
Hush.
The ending, the villain Hush, was, I think, deeper in the comic than in the movie. Especially with the, not really a spoiler, the possibility of him coming back, because it's a comic book trope, that uncertainty, it just makes you, knowing the comic book trope, that's a possibility, saying, oh, dang, if he comes back, there's going to be real problems.
Yeah.
And just that kind of open and...
I totally agree.
So good.
I love the art so much.
So well done.
And Jim Lee is probably, I think I can comfortably say, my favorite comic book artist. There are so many that are like right up there, but I just love his art and have loved it now for literally years. And he, like, I can look at a piece of art and go, oh, that's Jim Lee. Like, he does a cover and I'm like, that's Jim Lee's cover. Like, I understand him and how he draws and, but absolutely love that. It's just, I think, one of the major aesthetics that I'm like, this is a Batman aesthetic because of that story.
Yeah.
And I love the major multiple appearances that we get. Because we have, Poison Ivy, we get... Superman, we get Catwoman, we get Harley Quinn, we get Joker, we get obviously Hush, we get so many different characters. Like, every issue was jam-packed. And I think, again, like...
and it was kept going. And
right? And I loved how, like, one of the story aspects slid right into the next and slid right into the next. And I thought the writing was just so seamless.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that writer was Jeff Loeb. And he wrote some of the greatest, in my opinion, Batman stories with Long Halloween and several other ones that I was just like, wow, this just changed the game for Batman. And that was just such a pivotal thing. And that duo, to me, just nailed it. And I think with all the multiple characters, it's another thing comics can do that not really any other visual medium.
It's really easy to say, oh, you're up, instead of, okay, we need this character. He's on the other side of the world doing a movie. You're never going to get him right now.
Right, which in the movies, in comics, we've actually seen that issue come up.
Yeah.
So, like...
The second Rachel coming in because... oh, man, I'm real bad with names today.
That actress.
Sorry. I believe she was pregnant during the filming of the second one. Not going to work out for the story.
Nope.
So...
which, I mean, when you're working with live action, you're working with actors. When you're working with actors, actors are human. Actors have lives, actors have that complexity, and that is a legitimate limiting factor inside of that storytelling medium.
Yep.
And comics they just don't have that.
Right.
I think one of the biggest examples of that, we're totally swapping even, like, publishers here, but Civil War versus Civil War. and the comic and the movie, the entire story was totally different. The comic, I absolutely love the movie, but the comic just does so much more because they could. We're talking literally hundreds of characters. And
wow. I haven't read that one yet, so...
Dude. And it's just massive. And the commentaries are just so deep. And they could not physically do that no matter what the budget they were given. They just could not do it in a movie. And so they had
constraints alone, probably.
Oh, yeah. Hiring contracts. I mean, even if they got Joe from the street and paid them $100, like, putting that many people in legit costume, have them go and say one line, like, they could not do it in the movie. But you could do it in the comics. And you, like, with the story with Hush, like, they're like, let's put this one in, let's put this one in, let's put this one in.
I need this guy. Ooh, I love this villain. Let's bring this villain in, you're up.
And I mean, you obviously have some of those complications inside of comics, because if they're doing something totally different inside of their story, and it's sometimes it can be worked out, sometimes it can't.
Right.
But oftentimes they're like, this is a big deal. We can make this work. And the editors talk to each other and make agreements or whatever they have to do with their stories, and then say, hey, this is how we're going to be guiding this character.
Batman's going to capture them here, so you got to start your next one from prison. However they do it, right?
Yeah. And that's just a really cool thing that they're able to interweave in all of these characters.
Yeah. I think we need to touch on favorite live action version of Batman.
Okay. So that one... okay. I was going to say that's an easy answer, but I'm going to have two different things for two different reasons. So, Christopher Nolan with Christian Bale, I think particularly Batman Begins was my favorite Batman movie. In fact, it's my number 2 favorite movie of all time.
Yes.
I love that movie. It's such a cool becoming of age, liminal experience of a character growing from point A to point B and getting to see that transformation. Love it. The Ben Affleck character in some of the newer current stuff that we've seen, I like with Batman vs Superman, the combat that he does, like particularly like when he's going into the gangster hideout to rescue Martha, I'm like, this is straight out of the Arkham video games. Just the combat style, the look, all that kind of stuff. And then his fabric costume, I thought was beautiful. And we see mostly a fabric costume inside of the comics. He does definitely armor up, but so the other aesthetics totally work. But I just loved seeing a big, like bulky, tough, strong Batman inside of a fabric suit. Loved it.
That's one part I really liked about Earth 1. Batman getting dressed in his costume and Alfred's, sir, shouldn't you at least have some padding or something? No, because I don't want to need it.
Yeah.
If they see I need that, then I'm not as intimidating as what he was saying.
Yeah. Which, like, is there logic to that? Is there not? I don't know. Like, we can maybe debate it both ways.
Right. If it's me, I'm going for the super armored, bulletproof version.
Right. Go against the the Batman, Dark Knight Returns super suit.
Armored up. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Kind of the same. I'm always going to love Michael Keaton. That's where I really was introduced to Batman.
Totally.
Was Michael Keaton just...
There's actually currently talks of him potentially returning to the title. That's early. That's just rumors right now.
Right.
But I'm down. Totally down.
So interested to see what they would do with that because there are a lot of possibilities.
Yeah.
I think it would be beyond awesome if they did a Batman Beyond type scenario.
I know.
He was the retired version of Batman. Wow. Anyway.
Oh man. Like give me all your monies, right? Like I'll pay all.
Take my money.
Give me all your monies.
Take my money. That's not.
No. Oh man. Well, yeah, I think that's such a good response to that. Yeah. Okay, so I think we could probably dive into this for so many more hours, so much longer. I think we're probably going to wrap up this around here.
Yep, sounds good.
So hopefully some of this bat chat was really good and enjoyable. Obviously, we have a lot of things to say about this, and
we enjoyed it.
Exactly. So hopefully that was good for you guys. Like this video for more content like this, and be sure to subscribe if you want to be keeping in touch with all the new updates and new postings. So thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you guys next time.